All right, thank you guys for your patience. Let's go ahead and get started. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Alana Reyes. I am the K-12 Director of Counseling, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is the first iteration of our core curriculum night where we are bringing together our current parents. I'm assuming most of you guys have current 9th through 11th graders. And we wanted to we have always offered a night for our rising nines where they have the opportunity to hear about what's happening as your students go into 9th grade. But that's kind of where we have stopped, and we have empowered your students with the content knowledge that they need to make good choices. But we do feel it's important that we also empower you to help support your students make good choices with their course selection. Tonight we're going to spend a good amount of time focusing on our core content. We're going to focus on language and literature, social studies, which is individuals and societies, science, math, world language, and then we also have a representative from CTE, which is career and technical education. While that is not what we probably consider when we were going through school as core, it is a core fundamental part of our students' educational experience, and so he'll be here afterwards for questions. Tonight, this room, I hope this is a presentation that's pretty general, right? We're going to go through our sequencing of what the difference is with the different levels of classes, and then we're going to offer breakout rooms. So each individual subject will be in a different room. If we've answered all your questions here, great, have a good night. And if you have more questions, say for math, because I know math sequence is changing, and it's not changing dramatically, but there are small changes. If you had older students, you might want to hear a little more in depth about their presentation. I ask if you have a question in here. This isn't a night to talk about your individual student. If you have concerns about them, please make an appointment. We'd be happy to chat. If it's a real general question, please feel free to ask it. If it's a more specific content question about one area, that's what those breakout rooms are for. Okay? So again, thank you for joining us. For once, I am not going to be talking the whole night, which is a shock to most people. And our CTLs, our curriculum team leads, there are the curriculum experts in each department. They're going to be taking the lead tonight to discuss the content for their classes. So with that being said, are you good? Yeah. Sure. It's really whoever entered their information first. Mr. Laub did, he gets to start. So this is Mr. Laub. He is our CTL for literature and language. And here is you want to say?
Stand over here?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello. The primary focus here, I'll try to do this in 60 seconds or less, is in 9th and 10th grade. We offer honors English 9 and 10 as well as English 9 and 10. The core differences have to do with pace, rigor, and sophistication in an honors course. The pace and rigor in the English 9 and 10 courses is aligned to meet the essential learning targets. Most of the work in the English 9 and 10 is completed in class. In an honors class, you can expect a higher level of sophistication and rigor in terms of the texts that they read as well as the assignments that are in the papers that they write. In 11th and 12th grade, we offer IB English at the standard level and the higher level. The difference here is that the curriculum is actually different. So in 11th grade, students can choose language and literature, which is, I think I wrote something here about it, curriculum focused partly on literature, partly on language, i.e. media literacy, history of language, gender studies in language, etc. Or at the higher level, a curriculum focused on literature. The same differences with regard to pace and work and degree of sophistication exist at the standard and higher level, but the difference in 11th and 12th grade is that the content is also slightly different. Okay.
And that actually, for English, it's probably our most straightforward, here are your pathways.
There's a panel discussion part of this? Cool, okay. All right.
It's been a long day. Yes.
You have to choose standard in 11th grade and you can't switch out, right?
Not necessarily. We've had a handful of students each year that switch at certain points, but like depending on which point. So I've had a couple students do it like at the end of the first quarter. We would recommend if you're going to do it, kind of make that, the quicker you make that adjustment, the better. If the student is an IB diploma candidate, that switch matters greatly. because there's so many other factors with other classes that are calculated into that. If the student is not an IB diploma candidate, then it doesn't quite matter as much. And frankly, Ms. Reyes, I don't think it would matter much at the year. We've had that in the past, but the content is different, right? So even if going from junior to senior year, you're switching from HL to SL, the way that the course is going to be set up is going to be a lot of, okay, last year there's all of this. But it's happened and it's doable. So.
But not advisable.
Yeah, not
There are
advisable.
some internal assessments that they start to prepare for the end IB exam in their junior
Yeah.
year, and so there's definitely a lot of catch-up.
Yeah.
Any other questions for literature and language? Yes.
Hi.
IB has exams just like AP.
Correct. They at both levels, standard and higher level, they're in April, May of the student's senior year and assesses the curriculum over that 2-year period. So as you were asking, a switch at the end of the year is not really advisable because that's going to be tough for that exam at the end of the year.
And just to repeat the question was, does IB have exams at the end of the course? And we'll talk about it at the end. In about a week, Mr. Coates is going to have a full IB night where he discusses the sequence and all the courses. And it's really intended for rising juniors, but if you are a rising sophomore, you're welcome to attend as well. Any other questions for the English content? All right, moving on.
Okay.
Mr. Loeb. Next, we have individuals and societies, and the CTL is Eric Duchette.
Hello. So, we're a little bit more complex in English, but not much more. So we have things at every level that you have to take. Freshman year, everybody has to take world history. Oh, sorry. Everybody as a freshman has to take world history too. In 10th grade, it starts being able to make some decisions. You have the choice of standard government, where we just follow the SOL standards set forth by the state of Virginia. And you have the choice of AP government, which follows the AP curriculum, which finishes with the AP exam. The difference here between these two courses is the AP government course is going to be more rigorous, and you're going to have the AP exam at the end of the course. Both of these courses are going to be standards-based grading. This AP government was standards-based grading this year, and regular government is going to jump into that next year. In 11th grade, you have another choice. U.S. history follows the same way pretty much as standard government did. There's not going to be an SOL probably for the kids coming up that are juniors going ahead forward.
If you have a student that's currently a freshman or a sophomore, they should be done with their social studies SOL requirements for graduation. If you have a junior, it might be different, but freshmen and sophomores.
And I meant to say with the government, there is no SOL. We follow the state standards, but there's no SOL exam anyways. But so the difference between 11th grade is interesting because U.S. history covers all of U.S. history, whereas IB History of Americas covers the Civil War in like super depth, the 1880s through the early 1900s, basically through Wilson's presidency, and the Civil Rights Movement. And they focus on those three in super depth. It's very reading intensive, very writing intensive. They do very deep research paper. It's a hard class, but it's very, very rewarding. And it's the first part of a 2-part series. This is it's the HL version for this class, right? So they're going to do History of Americas their junior year, and then you'd go into IB World History, and you take the IB exam after those 2 courses that covers the content that you did through both of them. And I'll talk about that when I get to the 12th grade. And there is okay, that covers that. So IB World is the second part of that I was just talking about. So they cover in here the single-party states, the Cold War, and South Africa and the apartheid movement, which is like they tie in apartheid and our civil rights movement as similar things going on at similar times, but in different parts of the world. So the exam is at the end of that course, covers the first 2 courses, okay? So those are the 12th grade course isn't required, but that's up to the level. Now we get into the electives. We have IB Psychology, which you have 2 choices within there. You have SL1, or SL, which is a 1-year course. It's a little bit less intense in content than the HL level, which is a 2-year course. They cover the same content, just a little bit less depth. Both have internal assessments, both have IB exams, just a little bit less intense. Global Politics is a fairly new course. It's its second year through. It looks at basically international relations using current events. Also is going to have an internal assessment and also going to have an IB exam. It's a really interesting course. IB Business studies business management programs. Also IA, also IB exam. They're covering content that you would expect from a college level business course, essentially, like an intro into college level business. IB Economics has an interesting internal assessment program where there's really 4 topics within IB Economics. It's micro, macro, development, and international economics. The students will choose 3 of those topics to write their internal assessments, and then there's also going to be an exam at the end of that. The students also, in that course, it's very involved, where the students will bring the content that they know, and then they apply that content through, they try to solve problems and different things like that through the economics. Modern World is our elective for seniors. There's not an SOL for this course. There's no real guidance. It's very open-ended, and the way she teaches this course is very driven by the students and what they want to learn. They start the first semester off looking at just good skills to have in history, learning how to learn and do history. And then after that, they start choosing topics of what is modern history. They have a debate on what is modern history, and then they start choosing topics that go with that. And TOK is, I put it in here because it's kind of all the subjects, but we teach it. And this is part of the IB program, so Dan can probably talk better about it. But their goal is for them to think open-mindedly, critically, and it's a requirement of the IB course. All right.
I'm going to break down a couple of things.
That was a lot.
Information, and if you've had a student go through here, you're like, oh yeah, all makes sense. And if you've never had a student go through high school, a lot of those terms are probably super baffling, and that's okay. We get there one step at a time. A couple of things. If your student was an 8th grader, so in terms of graduation requirements, bare bones. Graduation requirements, students need 2 years of world history to graduate. Your students as 8th graders, if they were at Henderson, took World 1. They take World 2 in 9th grade, Government, which is also required in 10th, and a version of U.S. history in 11th. They have then met, by the end of 11th grade, their social studies requirements for graduation. It's a really cool thing that we allow them the opportunity, which is why Mr. Duché talked about all those electives. If they want to continue their studies with world history in that IB world history class, they can, or they can choose a completely different social studies elective if they want, or they can choose another science, or. That we really do give them lots of options, and so that is the real benefit of taking that World 1 in 8th grade. It also allows them to get rid of that SOL, be done with it, and one less thing to worry about when they're in high school. So that's one thing. There was another, but it's escaped me. Yeah.
Is the IB psychology the only one that's a 2-year, potentially a 2-year, you can take SL or HL, everything else is just a 1-year?
Except for the U.S. history, world history piece. That's a 2-year class.
As an elective, yes.
Oh, the elective, yes.
The question was,
Yeah.
are there any other electives that are 2 years? HL, psychology is the only one. In the U.S., and specifically at Mason, most SL classes, with the exception of a couple here and there, are going to be 1-year classes, and HL classes will be 2-year classes.
But you can take the HL in junior year, world history, and then switch to an elective the senior year, right? You don't have to take HL too. That's a nuance. That's
1,000,000%. The question was, do you have to take, if you just take IB history in junior year, you can then switch to something else senior year. Absolutely. The only caveat to that is there is no exam after the IB History of the Americas class because it's a 2-year class. The exam is taken at the end of senior year. So if it matters to a family that potentially earning college credit, you won't be able to do that through that lens, but you're absolutely able to drop that sequence and go somewhere else.
you don't have to take the test.
No, you don't. You actually can't take the test.
Yeah, because you haven't had the second part.
Absolutely.
I think
Good
she's got a question over there.
Yes.
You were talking about that 4-year sequence starting in 8th grade Is that for the advanced curriculum diploma as well?
Yes, the question is the 4-year sequence satisfying? That's for the standard and the advanced diploma? Yes.
And an IA, is an
Internal assessment.
What is an IA?
So it's essentially depending on the course, it's different. But it's essentially a project that they do that's assessed by the teachers, and then they send some out to IB to standardize the grades, essentially. Is that a good explanation? Yeah, you want to answer that, Dan?
So with IB, the exam process, the question came up earlier, are there exams in May at the end of a 2-year course, HL or SL? And the answer is yes, but the exam score is based on that sit-down exam as well as the internal assessments done in class. So IB has a very holistic way to examine not the final score 1 through 7 on an IB exam, not based solely on the sit-down exam in May. It's also based partially on the internal assessments that accompany it.
It didn't make it louder, it's for the video. To make everyone clear why I just did it. Yes.
If your student took SL psych, could they bump into HL psych, or is that the same issue from before?
I don't know.
Great question. The question is if they started with SL psych, could they bump into HL? We would want to have that conversation one-on-one, because if they know that now, it's potentially something that could happen, but at the end of the year, it would be a little late.
I feel like there used to be 2 history SLs, so if you want to take history for a couple of years, then you don't want to do a 2-year course, I felt. Am I right that there used to be 2 SLs offered?
There's
An
DE.
SL in 11th grade and SL in
There's never, the question was, would have there been more SLs? There's never been an SL U.S. history. There's always been the option that if a student took just general U.S. history in junior year, they could then take SL world history senior year, which is an option.
Okay.
But there is not an SL version.
So if you're taking SL senior year, you're actually in with the HL kids, right?
Yeah, it's slightly different assessments, but you're co-seated.
Can I?
Yes, you may.
So the IB history exam, a little unique in the IB exam world. The HL exam is based on the senior year, papers 1 and 2, senior year only, those studies. Paper 3 makes you higher level. Standard level and higher level students take the same exam for papers 1 and 2. If you're higher level, you come back the next day, do a 2.5-hour paper 3, and that covers the junior year IB history of the Americas. So you can sit in your senior year, do SL IB history, and actually get papers 1 and 2 and get an SL exam score. If you took the junior year course, IB history of the Americas, you then come back the next morning and take the higher level exam by examining on the history of the Americas.
All right, any other general?
I don't know if I missed something, but do all juniors take the IB history? No.
No.
The
So you,
question was, do all juniors take IB history?
so you need to take a U.S. history class. Your choices are.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah. So you need to take a U.S. history course. Your choices are standard level U.S. history or IB history of the Americas. And the content is different, but they both meet the needs.
And this is probably super overwhelming information, and you're just seeing it. I know people writing furiously, and I appreciate it. Number 1, this will all be video. Number 2, this will all be laid out in the program of studies, which will be a working PDF, and it's not available yet, but it will be up soon, and you can reference back to this anytime.
But for
Yes,
11th
please.
graders, this is just the only choice you're
Yes.
making. And then all the other electives are either, I guess, electives for 11th or 12th graders.
Yes.
But this happens either way.
This is required for graduation. The other stuff is extra. Remember, when they get into 11th grade, they no longer have PE, and so they have additional room in their schedule to take an extra class. I'll go here. Yeah.
There was a dual enrollment, and that was with a
Yes.
substantial paper, and it was rigorous, but it wasn't the HL, which is Latin America. Is that gone for good, and why?
So the question is about dual enrollment. There are multiple reasons why, but mostly it comes from who is certified to teach it. The teacher that was certified to teach our dual enrollment class has moved out of state, and it requires a certain level of master's and a teaching certification, and we just don't have anyone right now that in our building that can do that, number 1. Number 2, as our whole division, as the focus, as we hone down on our focus as being IB, it kind of was divergent from IB serving all of our students. And so when we didn't have someone to do it, it was kind of, it did work, it aligned to say, you know what, we're just going to make this work for our kids, and we've been having more to do it. Did that answer the question? Okay, yes. That's right.
Question on the IB exam. How does the IB exam impact the grade that's seen on the transcript, if at all?
Question was, how does the IB exam impact the grade? It doesn't. The IB exam is taken at the end. We don't receive the scores until the summer, and your grade has already been assigned. And typically the exam is taken after their senior year when they are enjoying their life, worrying about nothing regarding high school. I'm going to go there, there, and then we're going to probably move on. So 2 more questions, and I'm going to move on from social studies. Do you have a question? No? Okay. Yeah.
This is kind of a follow-on to this, but probably only applies more to math. If they take an IB class in 10th and 11th grade, would that exam go on their transcript?
Sure. If they take an IB class in 10th and 11th grade, so 9 times out of 10, all IB classes are for juniors and seniors. There have been a few exceptions with math. Again, the IB score never goes on their transcript. It's only the grade they earn in the class. Yes.
So you said all the information for the CBS and the program studies, but you suggested the program studies not up there. I've seen the 2019 to 2020 online now on Google Drive. I'm literally looking at it. So are you suggesting that new version's coming?
That's this year's. So 1920 is up. That is current and up to date. 2021 is this information.
And so when will that be posted?
I am working diligently and furiously on it, and I promise it will be available as soon as I can. We're actually looking to make it an interactive website, so it's not just a PDF, and so that is taking more time, and I think we're just going to move forward with the PDF for now and then work on the interactive later. It'll be available prior to your students registering for classes, which, and at the end I have a timeline for that. Your students will begin the second week in February. The goal is to have it by February 1. Okay, great. Let's move on to math. Plug your audio. And I have Mr. Thomas, who is our CTL for math.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you hold down the microphone button?
Okay, does this work? Okay, all right. I'm going to start out, this is our math pathways, and a lot of work went in to create this, and there's a current trend in math. We really want you to achieve, your child to achieve at their highest level, and this shows the paths, whether they're 8th grade and how they can proceed on Algebra 1 geometry in middle school, coming into high school. And this will be also published. And this is Mrs. O'Keefe, and she teaches the HL and some SL math classes here, and can answer some questions a lot better than I can, or probably more specifically for those courses.
James, I'm going to ask you, just because they can't hear in this mic, if you could just speak in front of this mic, that would be able to pick up.
Okay.
And then, I know math is going to have a ton of questions, and I'm going to ask if you have specific questions about math that we hold those until the room, just because that could take the rest of the night.
Because one of the most common questions we get from parents is kind of like, where can my kid go from here through the rest of their high school career with math? Especially because they're all taking different math classes at different grade levels. And so kind of starting with what they took in 8th grade, here are their options for 9th grade. Based on that class, here are their options for 10th. And it just allows you guys a little bit more of a progression, because we know that it can be very confusing. So we're hoping to put this into the program of studies so that you can kind of map out your student's path. Granted, sometimes there are some weird cases, and we'll figure those out as needed. But again, we'll talk about this and show this in our breakout session as well, so we can answer some of your more personal questions for your students, or kids, our students.
It will be in the program, I promise.
And so a lot of questions, we follow the SOL path through Algebra 2, and it's usually after Algebra 2 that there are a lot of questions arise as to where to go, and there are a lot of different paths to take. And so this slide talks about the differences for the Algebra 2 versus Algebra 2 honors and the contents. I hate to read off slides for you, but the Algebra 2 builds off skills mastered from Algebra 1, and it prepares students for the IB-SL level courses. The Algebra 2 honors with trigonometry is accelerated and requires very strong algebra skills. And all the topics covered in Algebra 2 are covered, plus it goes far more in depth into the unit circle and trigonometry content. And this is really for a very highly motivated student that enjoys solving difficult math problems. So
yeah, just what I want to talk about with that is a lot of students who take honors geometry in middle school just think, oh, the natural progression is I'm going to take honors algebra 2 trig. And that's true for some of them, but it's not necessarily true for others. And they just think that's where they're supposed to go, and then they kind of hit this wall and they don't really know what to do or how to get out of it if the content's a little too difficult. So that's why it's kind of trying to show you that regular algebra 2 is still going to prepare them for either of the 2-year standard level courses. It's a really in-depth algebra course, and it requires them to have sound algebra skills. The major component with Honors Algebra 2 Trig is the pace, because we cover all of Algebra 2 plus over a quarter of trigonometry and some of those concepts. So the students in Honors Algebra 2 Trig are expected to be very highly motivated. They're the ones that really enjoy struggling with math problems and being challenged by math problems. And the calculator expectation up there, and this is what we run into with the most surprise of students, they don't get their calculator a lot, because we really want them to dive into the mathematics and the algebraic manipulation of it and not just plugging things into their calculator. So that is why it's a very intense course that I think some students are a little caught off guard by after taking honors geometry in middle school. So just trying to differentiate those, but still will provide awesome pathways to the IB diploma if that is what they want.
you want to talk about this one? Press that button and talk into this mic.
Press the button and talk. Yes, okay. Hold the button. Okay. So the difference between the two IB standard level math courses, this is what's kind of changing. We used to have a 1-year IB Math Studies course, and that is going away because IB is kind of reconfiguring how the curriculum is split up. And so both of these standard level courses are 2 years. And so that's really important that students know that, because if they want to get a standard level IB course, they're going to have to take a 2-year course. And so the difference between them is all about what type of math your student likes to do. If they really like I said, the Honors Algebra 2 Trig, the algebraic manipulation, very algebra dense, that's going to be the analysis and approaches. That's not as heavy in the calculator use because we really like them coming up with conjectures, kind of proving them, and really, I can't emphasize the algebra piece enough, but it still has a lot of the content between the two courses, and the next slide will help us out as well, to show you the breakdown of the hours of what we spend on which concepts. Applications and interpretations is the one most like what we used to have of IB studies, because it is all about mathematical modeling. So it's very technology heavy. They use their calculator a lot to model real world mathematical examples and situations. So if your kid is one that just doesn't understand it until you put it into a word problem and explain it, that's the course for them. If they're the ones who do not like word problems whatsoever, but love kind of more that algebra calculus type of manipulation and logic, AA is kind of where they want to go. So that's kind of where we try to differentiate it. A lot of times it's kind of, and we would tell the students, if Algebra 2 was not your favorite course and maybe you got by, but you kind of struggled a little bit, you might benefit more from AI and doing some of those application problems. But again, both of them are standard level IB courses, so they're the same rigor, but just a totally different perspective of how we approach the mathematics. Yeah?
Those are not the courses that you have currently for the juniors. This is a new...
Currently we have AA Year 1. Yep, so that's what's being offered. It's the first year of that, and AA Year 2 will be offered. AI Year 1 will start next year. So we have our last year of IB studies going on right now. Yeah.
And I just want to be super clear, we are offering IB studies until the last year we can offer it. It is no longer accessible for anyone to teach.
Yeah, it's like no one gets to teach it. Yeah.
So does the AA follow what was pre-calculus in a previous?
So Year 1 of both of these courses is essentially pre-calculus content. And that leads me to the next slide. Kind of got moved. So you notice the 5 concepts in both of them are the exact same, but it's the hours that we spend in each of those topics that is very different. And so you can kind of think of AA as more of an honors pre-calculus look at the pre-calc content, because we're going to expect that they're really good at their algebra skills. We're going to go a little bit slower through those same concepts and spend more time on them. So you notice the functions number of hours. We're spending a lot more time going through those in AI, because they might not be as sound. And so geometry and trig, we spend a lot more on the trig in AA, and we spend more on just the geometry with some trigonometry in AI. And then Year 2 is where we do topics 4 and 5. This one, much more heavy on stats and probability. We do talk about calculus concepts in AI, but not nearly as much as we do in AA. So that's going to be the difference. Again, we do talk about probability and stats in that one, but we don't spend as much time in here.
So could a sophomore take that if they were done with the calculus?
If they took honors precalculus, that's kind of a weird jump. They would go into year 2. So they can go from honors precalculus to AASL year 2 because they've essentially taken the year 1 curriculum, but just not from an.
So I had a student who's graduated who did pre-calc in sophomore year, honors pre-calc, and then they took that, I think, it was probably maybe called something different.
Yeah. Then what do they take senior year?
Math,
Yeah.
and then they took BC Calc.
Yep. So that's another progression on the pathways that we can talk about for the students is that if juniors take a year 2, most likely it's going to be an AA, they take year 2 as a junior, they sat for that exam, then they can go on to BC Calc, HL1, and again, we'll talk about that in the math breakout. That is an option for students. Yeah.
So I'm curious about the timing of this. Is this before or after the Algebra 2?
After.
After.
This is all after Algebra 2.
They're taking Algebra 2 as a sophomore, so they could take this as junior and senior.
Yep.
So they would have to have been in advanced math already in 8th grade.
But there is always an option for students that are not in that position. And so we can go through that at the end because there are plenty of kids that just are on a very normal trajectory through math, right? Math is not, they just do because they need to do it, but it's not their love. And so,
that would be this option right here.
Yeah.
There will be, since all IB courses have turned into 2-year, there will be a summer offering that they could take. So they take Algebra 2 their junior year, but they want the IB diploma, they need it, they need their IB math course, so they can take a summer course before IBAI year 2, so then that way they take year 2 as a senior.
but that is only if they want to be a diploma
Yep.
candidate. If your student this math is not their thing and they're just going through, and again, we'll let them talk specifically about that. You can get through, graduate with an advanced diploma, and actually not take an IB level math class. That is absolutely an option.
Counselors available that we could sit down and talk individual cases through, because like we came in my son's 10th grade, and so.
Absolutely. So we can talk about that. We can see. I can speak with you, or we can make an appointment with the counselor.
Because this is all.
It's a lot. I know. It's a lot. Yeah. Okay. Last question. I want to make sure to get through the content.
Is there no difference anymore in HL and SL in the math? Is the AA and IA?
So
Or is there still an HL?
there is still an HL, yep. And so HL year 1, which is shown right here, that is BC Calculus is year 1. So they have to have taken honors pre-calculus as a sophomore to get into that as a junior. But now again, if they want to, there's some other pathways. If they want to try to get the BC Calc course, but they want to do IB at the standard level, they could get there and take that their senior year, certain pathways. And again, there's so many case-by-case basis, so I'm happy to talk about those with you guys, but yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the last thing about HL, I just want to, oops, too fast. Can't talk about science. Just the difference year 1, again, is AP Calculus BC, that's HL year 1. They take the AP exam at the end of their junior year. Their senior year is HL AA year 2, and we will take the IB exam at the end of their senior year for that course.
We are offering a new class, Probability and Statistics Capstone. It was presented and approved by the board, and we're really excited to be able to offer one additional class that is a non-IB class for, we all have different paths and goals and abilities to come to the table with, so to speak really quickly about that.
All right, so really quickly about Probability and Stats Capstone. That's something that as the math department came together, and we were trying to find an option where we had students that were in Algebra 2 as juniors, they weren't going for the IB diploma, they wanted a math course, but they didn't want to be shoved into one of those IB math courses. And we were like, they don't belong there. We kind of wanted something that really catered to those students who wants a 4th year of math, something that will benefit them going on after high school and beyond. So therefore, we came up with a probability and statistics course. It's not AP stats, which we used to offer. It is a combination of the standards from Virginia. They have a probability and stats set of standards. It's a combination of that as well as their Capstone standards, which is more of an applied statistics or applied kind of consumer mathematical approach to it. So it is very much more a hands-on with some probability and stats, but not a full probability and stats course. So it's those that did Algebra 2, maybe did well, did not do well, but they just want more of a hands-on mathematical class that is not IB at all. That kind of makes sense. Yeah.
guess, the AP stats for someone who's doing the HL math and wants the rigor of that and get college credit, it's gone.
There's only so many classes we offer, but you can take AP statistics through Virtual Virginia, and our district will pay for that to access. And if you want to talk about that, I absolutely can discuss that. I'm happy to explain Virtual Virginia offline. All that goodness. Okay, let's move on to science. Thank you, guys. And I know there's lots of questions, and I'm not trying to minimize those questions at all. I just want to make sure we get through. All right, this is Carrie Pollock. She is our CTL for science.
Hello. I'm going backwards, aren't I? Oh. Looks like I'm going forward. There we are. I do not have nearly as many slides. We are working on an array that looks like Math's array. We're getting there. But we have a lot of options, and you have a lot of ability to switch pathways. Our suggestion is that every student take 4 sciences. The requirements for standard diploma is to have 3 science credits, but you need 2 different disciplines, and the disciplines are biology, earth science, and chemistry. And then we have, to earn a Virginia Advanced Studies diploma, we have 4 science credits from each of those 3 different disciplines. So then when we take a look at what our 9th and 10th graders are doing, we generally enter our students in 9th grade from Science 8 at the middle school into Environmental Science 1, which is a science skills class, Bio 1, or honors biology. Those are our offerings to our 9th graders. And then it starts to branch off from there. Most biology students do take chemistry their 10th grade year, either honors or general level. And earth science and, of course, biology is an offering to students that took environmental science their freshman year. All right, so this is pretty clean looking. And then our array didn't quite come together, but it will for the program of studies. Yes, this is going to be spread out. But really, we didn't want to say if you took chemistry, then you have to take physics next year or something like that. But these are our junior level offerings, and these are our senior level offerings. Anything that's Bio 2, Chem 2, Enviro 2, anything with the 2 after it, you have to take the first level of it to take that second level. That is the prerequisite. But other than that, the students have a lot of choice in the progression they take. And students are, for those upper level or more science-interested students, are allowed to double up on science in certain years as they, don't have to take PE anymore and they have that room in their schedule. They can take 2 sciences, and students do so. I can't remember if I have any more slides. No, I don't. So what I'll say is somebody was asking about SL courses. In science, we do have an SL offering that is offered for 2 years, and a lot of places in the world offer environmental science SL as a 1-year course, and it becomes very rigorous. And we offer it at George Mason purposely over 2 years to be way more accessible to every student and to have plenty of time to go into all the issues. So that's a really nice option. And then, of course, HL Bio, HL Chem are 2 years, and then we offer SL Chem and SL Physics. The unique thing about SL Chem and HL Chem is they are co-seated, and you can take the SL exam at the end of your junior year and continue on to take the second year and the HL exam. I think that's correct.
You could just also explain, we're offering next year for the first time, our Biology 2 class will be given anatomy and physiology. Before we'd offered Bio 2 as an ecology class, and we're going to, based upon student interest, the science department really appropriately did some digging, seeing what kids were interested in, and so we'll be offering even anatomy.
Exactly. So yeah, that's the Biology 2 offering as anatomy, and then we still will be offering Earth Science 2, which is the astronomy offering, but that will be high C next year. We're considering, flip-flopping which one's taught in the classroom.
For human anatomy, is that based on computer? How do you use the
Yeah. That's a good question. I think there will be a lot of simulations. We're going to have teacher training this summer to take it. There's a whole curriculum given by the state of Virginia. So I would say no, it's not on the computer, but the labs probably are cell samples, maybe on a microscope slide, or maybe models. labeling, yeah. No. Yeah.
Ethical considerations behind that, high schoolers.
I'm sorry, yeah. No.
What's the progression from AP Physics in junior year to what do you take in 12th grade if you're interested?
We really recommend that students take AP Physics or CP Physics before they take SL Physics. That is the recommendation. Students can take AP Physics at the same time as chemistry in their 10th grade year. For that you have to be in Algebra 2 or past Algebra 2 as a sophomore to do that. A very strong math, because what we're talking about is the difference between algebra-based and calculus-based physics. So, yeah, the SL is the offering.
So they didn't take, there's no HL physics.
There is no HL Physics offered.
Highest you can go is SL
Mhm.
senior.
Yeah.
For bio, they take the bio SLL in whatever year they take bio, and then can they take bio 2 in any grade level?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
Bio 2 is Bio 1, the SOL associated with that class is the only science SOL your current 9th and 10th graders will take. If you have an 11th grader, again, it might be different, but for graduation, they'll just have biology and then they're done.
Well, and to clarify, you have to have one verified credit. So if they're not successful on the Biology 1 SOL, we do need to get them past one Science SOL. So,
But
Yeah.
we're aiming for Bio and done with everybody with that SOL.
I'm sorry, it's just
That's
another
good.
AP question, because I mean, I hear the train moving, it's going to IB, you know, no AP Chem, no ability to do that. That kind of helps a lot in college freshman year to get out of the tough Chem class. Everyone takes the AP Chem in their high school. We don't offer it. Ever gonna consider it, or?
No. We offer HL Chem, which I will tell you that all of our students that have accessed our HL science classes, I heard them speak at our IB ceremony specifically last year and was blown away by them being the experts in their science field. And so, no, as far as I know, and I am the expert only for here tonight, we will not be moving towards offering AP, but the great news is, again, we offer Virtual Virginia free for you, and you can access those classes, and they do offer AP, almost all the AP offerings.
and maybe Dan wants to speak to this, but we have had students sit for AP exams after taking the IB classes.
Absolutely.
So that option exists.
Can you just walk through, sorry, the requirement that they did the 3 different disciplines? So if they did bio 9th grade, chemistry 10th grade, and they want to take an HL Chem or bio, they have to then also take physics?
Physics or
science.
science. Yeah, so you'll see a double up, yeah.
Unless they're doing the IB diploma. Right. If they're doing the IB diploma, the state will give you a waiver on having three different disciplines represented on your high school transcript. So you can do bio, chem, IB bio 1, IB bio 2, graduate. If you're going for the IB diploma, that would work.
But you can't drop the diploma and expect that to graduate. That's one.
Okay, thanks.
The advanced. All right, last one is world language. This one should be pretty self-explanatory, right? We go from level 1 to level 2. Here's hoping. But Holly Garcia is here to speak about our language acquisition program.
Good evening. I would like to talk about how to get through the language acquisition program here at George Mason. She's right that in the beginning it's pretty simple, that we want you to go from level 1 to 2 and then on to 3 in order to get the advanced diploma. In the state of Virginia, students are required to finish 3 years of one language or 2 years of 2 languages. So if a student, and we have a very strong language program at the middle school, which is a blessing for us because it allows us to offer upper level classes. If a student starts with Spanish 1 and goes on to 2 and then to 3, then they can finish and graduate with the advanced diploma. If they go through French 1 and French 2 and then decide French isn't really for them, then they can choose another language and do that for 2 years and still fulfill the requirements for an advanced diploma. However, the World Language Department encourages students to continue beyond the advanced diploma requirements if possible. At social functions, when I introduce myself as a Spanish teacher, I often get, "Oh, I took Spanish in high school and I don't remember any of it." Aside from invalidating my entire career, they are definitely speaking the truth. Learning another language is a use it or lose it kind of ability. And I know that they're speaking the truth. because I went to high school, and all my friends that didn't go on to major in language like I did don't speak any languages anymore. So I find that that doesn't necessarily happen here at George Mason for students who go through as many language classes as they can. I find that students graduate with a surprising ability to be able to speak and to write and to communicate in a second language. And I think that's because when they get to level 3, they recognize how important language can be in their future. And so even ones that don't want to pursue the IB diploma often end up going into Spanish 4, which you can sit for, as you can see here, as a regular 4 class. Some of them even end up going into Spanish 5 and don't pursue the IB diploma. They just love the language. They recognize that it will be helpful for them in the future, and so they go on through this regular course. Some of our students who go through levels 1, 2, and 3 want to push themselves a little bit further, and so they, after 3, will go into AP4. This is, at the moment, only available for us in Spanish. And this is due mostly to the fact that we have a FLES program here in Falls Church City. So if you are a lifer, if your kids are lifers, they probably went to Spanish classes weekly at Mount Daniel and TJ, and they often come into the middle school with a higher level of Spanish than they would of French because they didn't have any exposure to French. And so they will progress through the Spanish program faster. The AP Spanish program has been a way for us to fill the gap for students who finish through Spanish 3 as 9th graders. And I teach Spanish 3 this year, and I have several 9th graders in my class. And the best fit for them, a really good fit, is either to go to regular 4 or to go ahead and pursue that AP class. The AP class is, finishes with the AP exam, of course. We do not offer AP 5 because what we really encourage students to do is then to go into the IB courses. Just like every other discipline, in language we offer SL and HL courses, and at present we don't have those in ASL. I'll speak about ASL in a minute, but we do have in Spanish, French, and Chinese SL1, SL2, HL1, and HL2 courses. And the difference between SL and HL primarily is their content. Because at the end of SL and HL, all students will sit for paper 1 and paper 2, and during the school year they participate in the internal assessment. And as you can see, paper 1 is typically writing tasks, paper 2 is listening and reading tasks, and the internal assessment is a speaking task. And as someone mentioned before, the internal assessment happens internally, cleverly named, the internal assessment, because it is graded by GM teachers, and then a few are set out for standardization to ensure that our teachers are marking fairly. Between the HL and SL courses, mostly what we see is in that HL course, a higher focus on literature. That could be plays or poetry or novels in the target language. And SL contains some literature pieces. It's not devoid of literature, but it has a greater focus on culture and current events. Questions? Mine's an easy one.
ASL.
Oh, yeah. And of course, this year is our first year in offering the new American Sign Language course, and it's going swimmingly. And we are planning to offer both ASL 1 and ASL 2 next year. We're planning to grow the program as we go through, and we're hoping to eventually, once it is approved by IB, because MYP has ASL included as a core course or a course option, but DP does not yet have ASL as an option. So if your student is really adamant on getting the IB diploma, know that it has not been approved as a DP course option, but that it's on the horizon from what we've been seeing. Yeah, but we don't know, when that's going to happen.
All right, so with that being said, just a quick update about, so tonight is, yay, done. Tomorrow is our course selection fair where your students will go around. You may have seen in the morning announcement, they'll have an opportunity to hear about all these classes, plus all the electives. They get to go to 3 sessions And really, we want them to go to the classes that they're like, I don't know what to take for my 7th class, or I don't know if I should take what level IB, what level government. So they really have an opportunity, and they'll spend time in their first block class making those planning decisions. In next week, is it next week? In 2 weeks, we have our Rising 9th grade night. And then we will go over to Henderson at the beginning of February to meet with 9th grades, Rising 9s. Second week in February, we will meet with our 11th graders through their English courses. Third week, we will meet with our 10th graders through their PE classes. And the last week, we will meet with 9th graders. There is no, my kid didn't get into a class, it was full by the time your 9th grade student gets there. That is not how our scheduling system works. It is equal opportunity. They all just get put into a bucket, and then we see how many kids are asking for the class, and we hopefully are able to offer to everybody, but they don't fill up with 11th graders and then 9th graders are at the bottom. It's not like that at all in our system. All schedules, all your students will have met with their counselor by the end of the first week in March, and then we will move forward and hopefully be able to offer all the classes that we're intending on offering. I always put the caveat in that we hope to run all of our electives, but if we are under-enrolled, we obviously have to make choices that behoove our whole population, and if only 5 kids have signed up for a class, it will be unlikely that it will happen, but typically we are able to offer everything we hope to offer. IB Information Night is on January 28th. Come talk to Dan that night, and he'll be in here after this to discuss if you have IB questions. And then here are the breakout rooms. They are all right in this math hallway, and I'll leave this up. Mr. Snyder, can you stand up for 1 second? So, you come up for 1 second. Mr. Snyder is in charge of our CTE program, our Career and Technical Education program. He is currently teaching all of our computer science classes. He teaches our AP Computer Science A and our IB Computer Science SL and HL. We have one other math teacher that teaches the AP Principles class. But he has a good breadth of all of our computer science and design classes and anything that falls under CTE. And so if you'd like to talk to him about that sequence, please stay in here. Otherwise, here are the rooms. And thank you guys for coming. Again, this was our first attempt at this. We can grow and learn, but thank you for listening and being here, part of this with us. So thank you guys. Have a wonderful evening.